Impact, one object propelling another forward. The laws of nature and physics are based on impact. The same is true of global processes and human relationships. Social impact means boosting the quality of life globally. Humans gaining control of fire led to a leap in development. The invention of the printing press provided access to knowledge and drove a chain reaction of social progress. Today's world works at hyperspeed compared to anything our planet has seen before. Digitalization, nuclear energy, smart cities, new methods in medicine and education. Every innovation that benefits billions of people begins with an idealist. Principled, focused leaders change the world. They create and find solutions, unite teams, and initiate something new and extraordinary. People who live far apart but share faith in the future. People who improve our world and by the energy of their impact set others in motion. Welcome to the GIC, uniting exactly such people. It breaks down challenges and builds sustainable solutions. We share our experiences and energize each other to drive human progress. Let's be full of energy for impact.
Hello there. My name is Yelena Hanga, and I welcome you to the Global Impact Conference 2020, Energy for Impact. This is a space for those who seek to change the world for the better and strive to embody a responsible approach to business and to their own actions. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, it was obvious that it is time to respond to new challenges as quickly as possible and strive to create a more sustainable future. We all understand that it is impossible to achieve such ambitious goals alone. That's why we are all together today. Global Impact Conference 2020 Energy for Impact is an open dialogue that aims to establish and strengthen cross-cultural and social partnership and to solve global problems. Our event is held as part of the celebration of the United Nations 75th anniversary and the 75th anniversary of the Russian nuclear industry. Dear friends, together we are launching the Global Impact Conference 2020 Energy for Impact. The modern perception of the term sustainable development has gone far beyond measurements of GDP and life expectancy. Sustainable development in the new reality is a call to action. It is something that unites diverse stakeholders, international organizations, states, businesses, NGOs, and every person. It focuses on improving the well-being and protection of our planet and on the idea of inclusivity, from gender equality to sustainable environmental practices. It helps people realize that our actions today influence what the world will be like tomorrow. Sustainable development. Where are we now? And what steps should we take to move toward a greener, more sustainable, more open and responsible world? What depends on each of us individually, and what can we only accomplish together? Our esteemed experts from international organizations, policymakers, and business people will present their views on these issues at our plenary sessions. Participating in the discussion today are Alexey Likhachev, CEO of Rosatom, Tatiana Volovaya, Director General of the UN Office in Geneva, William Magwood, Director General of the Nuclear Energy Agency and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Michael Harms, Executive Director of the German Eastern Business Association in Berlin, Paul Polman, founder of Image and Vice President of the UN Global Compact, Alexey Likhachev, General Director of Rosatom Corporation, opens our discussion as the organizer. After becoming the head of Rosatom Corporation, he initiated the creation of a new strategy, moving from leadership in the nuclear industry to global technological leadership. This year, the company became a member of the United Nations Global Compact. This is the largest international initiative of the United Nations in the field of corporate social responsibility and sustainable development, and this once again confirms Rosatom's loyalty to its mission. Nuclear technologies in the service of people and the planet. Nuclear power is a uniquely long-term business with a project planning horizon on 120 years, and this requires an understanding of the future. What are the key elements of our version of the future? What is the responsibility of business for the future? And what do you see as the potential for cooperation at the level of international organizations? I give the floor to Alexey Likhachev.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to open this conference. I am pleased to be surrounded by such inspiring global leaders. We have an ambitious task of creating innovative, shared responses to international challenges mankind is faced with. I am confident that the dynamic personalities assembled here will find great synergies between our unique experiences. The challenges the world faces today set new and much higher demands on state institutions, international organizations, and commerce. Business is vital in shaping our world and our legacy for future generations. I would highlight the following most relevant challenges. First, the environment and climate change. The need to decrease greenhouse gas emissions is now important for all spheres of human life: manufacturing, transport, and especially power generation. Second, the rapid advancement of technology. Agricultural and industrial revolutions took 2 centuries from technological development to global adoption, but the digital era changed the world in only a couple of decades. The pandemic has also showcased its role. Just this year alone, billions of people became far more familiar with doing business and spending time with family online. Innovation proceeds at an increasing pace, but technology does have limitations and can create new global inequalities. Third, the crisis of so-called quarterly capitalism, based on short-term views of financial profit and loss. The trend of consumers voting with their wallets is creating new ethical business models, forcing companies to improve their impacts on the environment and society. We understand what our responses to these challenges should be. They are largely reflected in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals adopted 5 years ago. Promoting these goals is part and parcel of Rosatom's strategy, the essential prerequisite of our work. Not surprisingly, in October this year, Rosatom joined the UN Global Compact. I would like to use this opportunity to thank the UN experts for the endorsement of our application, which we regard as a high appraisal of our efforts on domestic and international markets. We are also grateful to them for their engagement in the common aspiration to build a sustainable future in energy and other spheres. There is one more challenge that is often underestimated but is comparable with the climate emergency in its scale. This is the skill gap. As the market experiences job cuts, it simultaneously lacks an increased number of human resources who are equipped with the skills for the future. The response to this challenge requires shared action from the global community. The imbalance on the labor market, the skills gap, continues to grow. The skills that many of us will have developed earlier in our careers can become obsolete a few years later. In highly technical roles, Learned skills can have a lifespan of just 2.5 years. At the same time, there is an increasing need for new professionals. By our estimation, no less than 1.5 billion people worldwide are being affected by this trend. This twin focuses on protecting the environment and building a workforce fit for the 21st century will determine our success in other challenges related to the place of an individual in the model world. Eliminating hunger, promoting good health, quality education, and well-being, providing access to clean water and sanitation, these and other sustainable development goals rely on our ability to tackle the climate and skills challenges the world faces. And most importantly, the top focus should be on self-fulfillment and on the ability to apply one's talents and faculties. Rosatom is elaborating its own response to these challenges. We provide energy and other services to many millions of people in Russia and other parts of the world, and we feel responsible for the communities we operate in. All our businesses, from traditional clean nuclear power generation to our new wind power generation, digital and environment protection products, focus on substantial improvement of the quality of life and creation of sustainable cities and communities, supporting peace, justice, and strong institutions. People are at the center of any transformation. This year has made it perfectly clear for all of us that the future is human-centric. Building global business organizations to unlock the potential of all people, regardless of gender, age, and geography, calls for cooperative efforts. The principle of human centricity is at the heart of Rosatom Vision 2030. We aim to create a corporate environment where every employee and partner can unlock their human potential. Today, we suggest establishing a working group to continuously monitor and collect the best practices in nurturing talent for economic growth and sustainable development. This working group should bring together business leaders, international organizations, NGOs, and others. We will be looking forward to the inputs from key UN institutions such as the International Labour Organization, UNICEF, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and others. Dear colleagues, I sincerely appreciate that you have found the time and opportunity to share your insights at the Global Impact Conference. Our collaboration will inspire more and more change makers to join us. Together, we will build companies and other organizations to create a sustainable world. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I wish you all success and thank you for your attention. Let our energy for impact multiply positive changes across the globe. Thank you very much.
I thank Alexei for his fascinating comments and congratulate the Rosatom Corporation on joining the UN Global Compact. Thank you for elaborating on the green and human-centered future Rosatom is creating in many countries. Our next expert is Director General of the UN headquarters in Geneva, Tatiana Valovaya. The United Nations has undoubtedly shaped the concept of sustainable development for many decades. I'm pleased to note that Tatiana Valovaya, who is my compatriot, became the first woman to head the UN headquarters in Geneva. As the head of the UN Geneva office, Tatiana would like to know the universality of the Sustainable Development Goals for describing challenges and approaches to solving global problems. It is important to mention Tatiana's personal initiatives in this area, in particular the SDG Lab projects. This is a platform where Tatiana's team analyzes and gives an opportunity to develop the best practices of a sustainable future. Tatiana also leads a discussion on what multilateralism should look like in order to ensure coordination of efforts of a large number of participants to solve common problems. Tatiana, we're all excited to hear your perspectives.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would like to warmly welcome the participants of the Global Impact Conference. Let me begin by thanking the Rosatom State Nuclear Energy Corporation for organizing this virtual conference despite challenging circumstances, and personally, my old friend and colleague, Mr. Alexey Likhachov, for his commitment and vision. The ongoing pandemic is one of the most acute challenges to international cooperation since the end of the Second World War. COVID-19 created many crises. First and foremost, a human crisis, a global health crisis, a socio-economic crisis, a financial crisis. This crisis came on top of the already existing global threats of climate change, conflict, and poverty. Resolving them is particularly challenging due to the existing international tensions. Besides, it is impossible for a single country or for a single international organization to tackle these global challenges alone. The pandemic has clearly demonstrated how interdependent our world is. The only way to overcome this and any other global challenge is through partnerships and international cooperation. Today's conference is exactly about this. It aims at building more robust cross-sector collaboration among public and private organizations across countries and assessing the impact of our collective actions towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. The 75th anniversary of the United Nations also provides us with an important opportunity to reflect together about the ways to transform the current global governance model into a more inclusive and networked multilateral system. The United Nations launched this year the first ever global conversation on the role and future of the multilateral cooperation. Over 1 million people across the world participated in the survey, and more than 1,000 dialogues were organized in 82 countries. The results of the survey speak for themselves. They are an important confirmation that the work the United Nations is doing together with all relevant stakeholders is needed and is impactful. Most respondents believe that global cooperation is vital to deal with today's challenges. People around the world believe in multilateralism. The United Nations 75th initiative was also shown the necessity for the United Nations to be more inclusive of the diversity of actors in the 21st century. The dialogue participants identified in particular the need for greater cooperation between civil society, women, youth, vulnerable groups, cities and local authorities, business, regional and other international organizations. The participation of young people in this worldwide conversation was defined as priority number one. The United Nations office in Geneva was actively engaged in this initiative and conducted several online events dedicated to multilateral cooperation in the time of COVID-19. Heads of various UN agencies and leaders of Swiss-based international organizations directly engaged students from universities, academia, and think tanks to work and to seek their views on ways to transition the multilateral system in order to increase the efficiency, transparency, and inclusiveness. Looking to the future, two challenges are of particular importance as they are already shaping new realities and will continue to drastically transform our societies in the 21st century. They are climate crisis and digital transformation. As we live in an era of unprecedented inequality, both these challenges could deepen inequalities even further. On the one hand, digital technologies provide a powerful tool for achieving sustainable development goals. There are many examples demonstrating how digital technologies are contributing to the global goals. The use of e-health solutions can improve access to health services. Mobile money can allow to quickly and securely transfer money to people in need, and many other digital tools can help those affected by an emergency or a natural disaster. However, we should not forget that the positive effect of digital technologies is felt only by citizens who have access to the internet. As of now, the amount is slightly more than half of the humanity, but practically half of the world population does not have an access to internet. Beyond the issue of access, the digital divide also refers to the gap in skills and learning opportunities. If left unaddressed, the digital gap between underconnected and hyper-digitalized countries will widen, thereby exacerbating existing inequalities between nations. In most developed countries, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to the rapid growth of some services such as telemedicine or online education. The pace of digitization of our societies is likely to accelerate in the years to come, and we need to equally address its impact on the future work and the role of automation. However, to bridge the existing global digital divide in terms of access, inclusion, and equality, the international community still needs to go the proverbial extra mile. Climate change is the other global challenge that affects everyone, everywhere. Although we have already begun to experience the consequences of climate change, this is only the start. Future generations will be the ones having to face the multiplier effect of global warming. By 2050, accelerating climate change will affect millions of people through malnutrition, diseases, migration, and extreme weather events. The decisions we make today to combat global warming will determine what future generations will have to live with. Citizens rightly demand from today's leaders a tangible climate action based on climate justice and climate fairness. Ladies and gentlemen, this year marks not only the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, but also the 20th anniversary of the United Nations Global Compact. 20 years ago, then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan launched this initiative to encourage businesses worldwide to adopt and implement sustainable and socially responsible policies. What started as a small group of 44 businesses, the 44 business leaders, has now blossomed into a global movement encompassing more than 12,000 companies based in over 160 countries, representing nearly every sector and every size. 20 years ago, Kofi Annan stated, "If we cannot make globalization work for all, in the end, it will work for no one." Many business leaders have since realized how relevant these words are. Today, the participation of the UN Global Compact championing the idea that businesses has a key role to play in shaping a global economy where people and planet can equally thrive. I am particularly glad to learn that a renowned company like Rosatom has recently joined the UN Global Compact and wish to congratulate the Director General Alexei Likhachev on this very important decision. Today, Rosatom is one of the leading players on the global market of nuclear technologies. It constructs nuclear power plants in various countries and provides high-tech services in the field of nuclear technologies all over the world. As the largest source of clean energy, nuclear power is critical to reducing carbon emissions. Rosatom, therefore, plays a significant role in the global decarbonization efforts. It is encouraging to see an increasing number of countries committed to reducing their carbon footprint. For example, Costa Rica made a commitment last year to decarbonize its economy by 2050. China, which accounts for about 28% of global carbon dioxide emissions, also announced an ambitious goal to cut its carbon footprint to net zero by 2060. Japan and South Korea also recently announced that they would cut their carbon emissions to zero by 2050. In this recent address at the East Asia Summit, Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for all countries to stop building new coal-fired power plants and for partners to stop funding them. Both state-owned and private corporations have a moral obligation to help national governments reduce their carbon footprint and reach net zero emissions by mid-century. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we should use the COVID-19 recovery global effort to build climate-resilient economies and work together towards carbon neutrality by 2050. This will also drive the job creation that will ultimately reduce inequality and address the air pollution in large cities. This year's challenges have created an important momentum for change. The pandemic made it clear that investing in people and in the preservation of the planet is becoming critical. Last September, during a special session of the General Assembly in New York, business leaders from over 100 countries signed onto a powerful document entitled Statement from Business Leaders for Renewed Global Cooperation. The statement acknowledges that the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals is beneficial to the long-term viability of private companies, but much more needs to be done. In order to turn this strong commitment into tangible actions, businesses need to assess the long-term costs and benefits of their activities. We need to see more public-private partnerships, especially at local but also regional levels, including civil society and young people. In a world more interconnected than ever, building bridges between the public and private sectors, academia, and civil society is a sine qua non condition for moving our common agenda for sustainable development goals forward. It is absolutely necessary to continue in this direction. I wish you a productive conference. Thank you very much.
I thank Tatiana for her interesting comments. You're absolutely right. There is still a lot to do to balance the interests for sustainable development and economic growth throughout the world. It is necessary to use all available tools as effectively as possible. The role of cooperation cannot be overestimated. Our next speaker and his team are successfully implementing the SDG agenda in the nuclear industry. The head of the Nuclear Energy Agency at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, William Magwood. The main goal of the NEA is to help participating countries develop civil nuclear energy. Currently, the organization consists of 28 countries in Europe, North America, and Asia. William has extensive experience both in field of regulation and in the development of nuclear energy, including his work at the international level. From 2010 to 2014, he was one of 5 commissioners on the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, appointed by the President of the United States and approved by the U.S. Senate. In this position, he was committed to the need for independent nuclear regulation and the idea of maintaining strong, reliable, and technically sound nuclear regulation in the United States and in all countries that use nuclear energy. I give the floor to William Magwood.
Hello. I'm Bill Magwood. I'm Director General of the OECD Nuclear Energy Agency. It's a pleasure to join you for this important event today. I wish we could all be here together in person, but unfortunately, because of the COVID crisis, we've had to go virtual. While we're doing it virtually, I think we'll still have a very valuable exchange and a very valuable set of comments being made this morning. I'd like to start by reflecting on something very important. And that is that the future is about electricity. My view is that the Sustainable Development Goals can be achieved if we provide for the expanded use of electric energy around the world. Not just in developed countries, which have benefited from for many decades, but the developing world as well. People around the world have the right to be able to have their children study at home in the dark. They have to have better health care and access to clean water. Electricity is the key to many of these things. And as our societies progress together, the availability of reliable, cost-effective electricity will be key. I believe that nuclear energy, as long as with other sources, can provide the pathway for us to make this electricity available across the world. And we in developed countries recognize that we've become more dependent on electricity than in the past. Think about all the children who had to study at home during the COVID crisis, people who teleworked instead of driving to the office, people who relied on electricity for entertaining their families. We see that electricity is really the source of our society today. I believe that just like oil in the past, and maybe even before that, other minerals, electricity will be the determiner of economic success or failure for countries around the world in the future. Countries that have access to that reliable supply will be successful, those who do not will not be. So we have to find a way to provide that electricity without harming the environment. We have to have a way of both eating our cake and having it too. And I do believe electricity from nuclear power, as well as renewables, can be the source of that electricity. And we also believe, just like Mr. Likachoff said earlier this morning, that there's a human capital gap. And this, I believe, is something we can work on together. Together, we can help train the next generation of experts in the sciences and also in the nuclear area to help propel the future. This is something I know that many of us who are listening today have all participated in, to make sure that there's a new generation of experts, who are both men and women, that can carry the ball for those of us who are here today to make sure that the future is a brighter place than ever. So on behalf of the Nuclear Energy Agency, I certainly look forward to seeing the results of this discussion and look forward to participating with all of you to make the future a better and brighter place. Because I think together, cooperating, hand in hand, that is possible. So I wish you all the best. Stay healthy. Thank you very much.
I absolutely agree with the central role of clean energy in addressing the climate emergency. We are witnessing how the emergency of energy changes the life of villages, gives children the opportunity to learn and families to get out of poverty. I am glad Mr. Magwood, the NEA, and Mr. Likachoff of Rosatom are so optimistic about the benefits of global collaboration. And now I give the floor to Michael Harms, Executive Director of the German Eastern Business Association. Michael worked in Brussels as Executive Secretary of the Business Advisory Council for Southeastern Europe. In Moscow, he was chairman of board of the Russian-German Chamber of Commerce. From 2012 to 2016, he held the position of representative of the network of German chambers of commerce around the world. As executive director of the German Eastern Business Association in Berlin, Michael and his team work at the intersection of the economic and social interests of the German government and business leaders, as well as the governments of 29 foreign partners, countries, and the European Commissions. Mr. Harms will talk about the values the German business partnership programs are based on.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of today's conference, I'm very grateful for the invitation to speak at today's conference dedicated to the very important topic of sustainable development. I'll try to give you the German perspective on that matter. My name is Michael Harms. I represent the so-called German Eastern Business Association. So we represent the interests of German business in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, from Poland to Tajikistan, covers 29 countries and stands for almost 20% of German foreign trade, including Russia. So this is a very important economic partner of Germany. And sustainable development is very important also in that region and also very important for German business. When I personally first learned about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I was, frankly speaking, a little bit skeptical because I considered these 17 development goals to be rather abstract. So I think we all would agree that we need zero hunger, better healthcare system, and a perfect education. So it reminded me a little bit at that time at the old joke that it's better to be healthy and rich instead of being poor and ill. But I must admit, I was totally wrong. I think that these development goals have become more and more a very important part not only of world's politics, but also of a very important part of the discussion among societies, our stakeholders, NGOs, and also for business. And they represent also concrete business cases, which is very important for us as German business. And in Eastern Europe, this question, especially when it comes to climate change and energy transition, is becoming more and more important. And let me give you the perspective from Germany, from German business on that matter. You know that we face a very important challenge. So it is necessary to increase our energy consumption because world's population is growing. We need more well-being, we need a better development of the economy. But on the other hand, we should increase this energy consumption with less emissions. And this we can also only achieve with a mix of green energy and energy efficiency, which is very important in the European Union, but also with our eastern neighborhood, where Russia is belonging to. You know that the European Commission established at the end of 2019 the so-called Green Deal, with the goal to be net zero emissions by 2050. And till 2030, the European Commission will spend 1 trillion euro to achieve this goal. It is a big challenge for German business, but it is also a big chance for German business, not only within the European Union, but also in the cooperation with our eastern neighborhood and also with Russia. We have for many, many years long and very sustainable energy cooperation with Russia. So round about 30% of our energy import comes from Russia. It is mainly oil and gas. And the huge challenge is now to organize the transition to a zero emission or less emission energy import. And here we have especially in mind the transition towards a hydrogen energy. And I think that our Russian business partners can play here a very important role. For Russia, on the other hand, climate change is also very important and poses a big challenge because Russia is also influenced by the climate change. Russia is part of the Paris Climate Agreement and contributes also to a transition to a green economy. And I'm very grateful to Rosatom, who had the initiative to organize this conference dedicated to the global sustainable goals. I think that nuclear energy can here be part of the solution, can contribute very much because it is a kind of energy which is emission-free. So therefore, I think that nuclear energy in medium and long term can be a very important contributor to this very important goal. And here we have been establishing in the last years a very fruitful cooperation with Rosatom in the field of nuclear safety, in the scientific cooperation, and also in the cooperation beyond nuclear, because Rosatom is also very active, for example, in wind energy and in hydrogen. And I think hydrogen here is the future. German companies worldwide have a big knowledge in this field. They are world leaders in technology and products which are connected to energy efficiency and green economy. 14% of the whole worldwide trade with products in the green economy are German companies. So therefore we have a perfect constellation for increasing our cooperation with our Russian partners. I think we as German Eastern Business Association contribute to that. Thank you very much again. I'm very grateful to take part in today's discussion.
Michael, thank you very much for your presentation. And our plenary session ends with a real highlight. The head of Imagine, a person who is directly involved in the creation of the UN Global Compact as a platform for more effective corporate cooperation within the SDGs, Mr. Paul Polman. Let me remind you that in October of this year, Rosatom also joined the UN Global Compact. Paul is a leading proponent of the idea that business is a force for good. As CEO of Unilever, the global consumer goods giant, he demonstrated that a long-term multi-stakeholder model goes side by side with strong financial performance. Paul was a member of the UN Secretary General's high-level panel that developed the Sustainable Development Goals and continues to work with global organizations and all industries to advance the 2030 development agenda. Paul has done a lot in his diverse and impactful career. He's been a top global CEO, an expert in international organizations, and a leader of the SDG platform. Paul, you have the honor of summarizing the results of our discussion. Thank you for joining us.
Well, hello. I'm Paul Polman, the founder of Imagine and the former CEO of Unilever. I'm delighted to be with you today. Thanks to everyone at the Global Impact Conference and Rosatom for the invite and for bringing together partners who share a common agenda around the Sustainable Development Goals. During my time at Unilever, I spent a lot of time in Russia. And whilst Rosatom and Unilever represent different industries, we share a common vision for Russia's sustainable future. For Unilever, that meant, for example, moving to green energy, driving sustainable sourcing, or leveraging our brands for good. Climate change and inequality are our biggest burning platforms. We've seen the world step up on climate change to attack this in all major regions, like the EU, China, Japan, and hopefully soon the US, all making commitments to stay below 1.5 degrees. Totally possible and badly needed, and we hope that Russia will soon join the ranks as well. We cannot tackle the climate change agenda without moving towards a low-carbon economy, expanding the use of renewables, and getting the needed support at the regulatory level. It indeed takes all of us. It is also an honor to be amongst many friends from all over the world, including the OECD, the Nuclear Energy Agency, and the United Nations, and of course, Alexei Likachev from Rosatom. The SDGs were developed in 2015 as a follow-up to the Millennial Development Goals. The Millennial Development Goals focused on halving the number of people living in poverty. And lo and behold, we actually achieved that. The SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, are here to finish the job. Now, universal with a simple objective to not leave anyone behind, to irreversibly eradicate poverty and do that in a more sustainable and equitable way. Unlike the MDGs, business is now firmly at the table and in many areas leading. If anything, the COVID pandemic has reaffirmed the SDGs and their relevance. It has become the most important agenda. Lenin is often attributed to the quote that there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. Well, that's what we're going through now. The scale of change that we are seeing is that of one of the industrial revolution, but with the speed of the technological revolution. COVID certainly has shown us some lessons. First and foremost, it's the biggest crisis we've ever seen, and many call it the Great Reverser, with growth going down 4 to 4.5% this year, putting us back on the SDGs probably by 10 to 15 years. Above all, it has shown the unpreparedness of the global economy to systemic risk. It has also shown the faults in our multilateral system. More people will die of hunger and poverty than the disease itself, unfortunately. 500 million job equivalents are lost, 100 million people pushed back into poverty, and people already living on the margins are once more the hardest hit. COVID has shown us that we cannot have healthy people on an unhealthy planet. The interdependence of nature, human health, climate, economy, social inequality is now much better understood. Now, if we want to achieve any of the goals, we must address all of the goals. Especially in nature, which has seen a shocking 68% decline in animal species over the past 4 decades. Some call it already the 5th big great extinction. We have discovered that there is no infinite growth on a finite planet, and anything we can do forever is by definition unsustainable. Ultimately, it will lead to a point where the system collapses, and we're starting to see that. We're close to negative feedback loops in many areas. In Russia, for example, you are already getting your fair share of disasters. And we've seen that, unfortunately, you are more susceptible to the negative effects of climate change. Nature provides services worth an estimated $125 trillion a year, so we better take care of it. The same is true for inequality. 4.3 billion people living still on less than $5 a day. There are over 1.6 billion vulnerable workers. 500 million have slid back into poverty. Now we need to tackle the mainstream narrative about endless growth on a finite planet and shift to an economy that works for all, operating within the planet's limits. The good news is that companies that run a better long-term multi-stakeholder model, or ESG, environmental, social and governance, are also better performing. We now have the data. These companies that meet in leading the needs of all stakeholders are financially outperforming those that lag behind by almost 30%. And globally, 89% of the ESG screened indexes now outperform the benchmark according to Morningstar. ESG funds, not surprisingly, have seen a record inflow and are moving rapidly from reputational risk to opportunity. And that is not surprising, as we are at a point where the cost of inaction is starting to be higher than the cost of action. We've seen that with COVID. We've spent over $12 trillion just to stabilize the global economies as a result of COVID. And implementing the Sustainable Development Goals to avoid these issues in the first place would cost about $2 to $3 trillion a year. We've also seen that fast action can be taken. The private sector is stepping up and many businesses are pivoting, future-proofing themselves. Most people equally want to change. They don't want to go back to where we came from. More importantly, they want large businesses to contribute to an economy that simply works for all. We missed that opportunity after the financial crisis in 2008. This time, once more, the direction is clear, but speed and scale are missing. This has to be the decade of action. Unfortunately, we fell further behind on the SDGs than when we started in 2020. We now need to seize the opportunity to forge ahead. The SDGs will only be achieved if all parts of society work together. Multilateralism is vital. Pandemics and climate change are global issues that know no borders. So is poverty, by the way. As we build back better, we need to keep equality and justice at the foreground of those efforts. Achieving the global goals will hopefully create a world that is comprehensively sustainable, socially fair, environmentally secure, economically prosperous, inclusive, and predictable. However, awareness of the goals is still low, and so is feeling a responsibility of delivering them. Many in the business community, I believe, think that this is government territory. However, our research tells us a different story. First, it shows that business really needs the goals. They are offering a compelling growth strategy for individual businesses, for business generally, and for the world economy. Second, the global goals really need business as well, for its innovations, its financial flow, and above all, its resources. Fortunately, many leading companies are starting to incorporate the global goals into their growth strategies, value chains operations, and policy positions. And yes, they're all the better for it. Achieving the global goals gives a minimal $12 trillion market opportunity and create 380 million incremental jobs just when we need them. And that only in 4 areas: food and agriculture, cities, energy and wellness, and health and well-being. If a critical mass of companies embrace them, we will become an unstoppable force. If they don't, the cost and uncertainty of unsustainable development could swell until there is no viable world in which to do business. The business case for sustainable development is already very strong. It opens up new opportunities and big efficiency gains. It drives innovation. And yes, it enhances reputation. With a reputation for sustainability, companies attract and retain employees, consumers, customers, and investors. And they secure their license to operate. That's why sustainable companies around the globe are thriving and delivering attractive returns to shareholders. That's why over 14,000 companies around the world have already signed up to the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, a guide to sustainable business behavior. There are 6 simple actions that you can take as a business leader to capture your share of the prize. All of them require real leadership from the top. First, build support for the global goals as the right growth strategy in your companies and across the business community. Second, incorporate the global goals into your company strategy. Third, drive the transformation to sustainable markets with sector peers. Fourth, work with policymakers to pay the true cost of natural and human resources. Fifth, push for a financial system oriented towards longer-term sustainable investments. And last but not least, rebuild the social contract. Thanks you again to the Global Impact Conference for this opportunity, and I certainly hope that you have a good discussion over the next days. As Nobel Prize winner Margarita Matai said it well, when she said that in the course of history, there comes a time when humanity is called upon to shift to a new level of consciousness, to reach a higher moral ground. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that that time is now. Hopefully, a successful conference, and thank you for all what you are doing.
I thank Paul Polman and all of today's speakers for their presentations and for the impact they shared. This is a great boost that inspires a lot of people and companies to move forward with us. Of course, today we're all on different stages of the path to the Sustainable Development Goals, and this makes it possible to see the situation from different angles and use this diversity for the benefit of a common cause. Summarizing the plenary session, I would like to say that despite the fact that we work in different industries, live in different time zones, and speak different languages, we look and think in the same sustainable direction. And this is the most important thing, because only together can we change this world. I agree with all our speakers. Impact is both a global and a personal phenomenon. The last year has shown us all very clearly how small our world is and how much depends on our ability to cooperate, to preserve what makes us unique, be flexible, and at the same time follow common principles. The plenary session is over. Thank you.
From across countries, professions, and mindsets, we've come together. We think. We act. We're building the future. We work to improve people's lives. Our goal is equal opportunities for all. It can seem that we are surrounded by challenges and difficulties, but change always seems impossible until it's done. None of us can change the world alone. Exponential cooperation creates a world of harmony and prosperity, a dynamic ecosystem to tackle global challenges. Today, our Energy for Impact has been set in motion. We inspire others to take on the challenges of the 21st century. Everyone who has been touched by this energy of impact can pass their enthusiasm on to others. This chain reaction will touch hearts and achieve global goals. Our energy will launch positive shifts all over the world.